the answer is pretty simple. Yes, we can. Yes, we do, because we must. Our Navy, as you well know, has global responsibility. It obviously patrols the sea lanes and safeguards the freedoms of our allies and ourselves. The Navy right now has only 286 ships, and that number may decrease. That will limit our options and extend tours for Navy personnel, making it tougher on everyone and lessen our ability to secure our allies and to deter our adversaries. The Obama administration seems strangely unconcerned about those matters, though. When George W. Bush came into office, he inherited a military that had been cut deeply, and he had inherited really Al-Qaeda that had been unchallenged, and an approach to terrorism that focused on bringing court cases rather than destroying those who sought to destroy us. And we saw some of the result of that in 9/11. When President Obama came into office, he inherited a military that was winning in Iraq. He inherited loyal allies and strong alliances. And because the media is pawing and purring over him and not really vetting him as a candidate, he also had the benefit when he came into office of unparalleled global popularity. Wow, what an advantage he had. So you'd think that their basic foreign policy outlines should have been a bit easier, certainly clearer. One, to commit to winning the war on terror, commit to winning not just withdrawing, but winning the war in Afghanistan, commit to the fight against violent Islamic extremism wherever it finds sanctuary, and to work with our allies, and to be resolute with our adversaries, and promote liberty, not least because it enhances our security. It enhances our security when we're promoting liberty around the world. Unfortunately, though, those basic principles essentially seem to have been discarded. This administration has banned the phrase war on terror, preferring instead politically correct nonsense like overseas contingency operations is what we'll call the war on terror. Obama's Homeland Security Secretary calls acts of terrorism man-caused disasters. Heaven forbid we call it what it is. His reckless plan to close Gitmo, because there's no place to go with this plan to close Gitmo, it faces finally bipartisan opposition. The Attorney General just announced that a decision about where to try terrorists, like 9/11 mastermind, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, it would be not announced until after the midterm elections in November. Is there something perhaps that he is afraid of us knowing? The President's new national security strategy does not even use the word Islamic anymore when referring to violent extremism. Does he think that the ideology of those who seek to kill Americans is irrelevant? How can we seek to defeat an enemy if we don't acknowledge what motivates them and what their ultimate goals are? President Obama may think that he is being politically correct by dropping the term, but it flies in the face of reality. And as Senator Joe Lieberman noted, refusing to use the word Islamic when describing the nature of the threat we face, it's Orwellian and it's non-productive. It's counterproductive. In Afghanistan, it is true that President Obama approved deploying additional forces to the conflict finally. Most, not all, of the troops that were requested by commanders on the ground. Now this is a problem because it took months of indecision to finally get to that point, and it came at a very high price. That price? We had to name a date, July 2011. That is the date to begin withdrawal. This date is arbitrary. It bears no relation to conditions on the ground. It sends all the wrong signals, obviously, to our friends and to our enemies. We know our commanders on the ground are not comfortable with it. And as that great Navy war hero, Senator John McCain, recently put it, it's a problem because the decision to begin withdrawing our forces from Afghanistan arbitrarily in July 2011 seems to be having exactly the effect that many of us predicted it would have. It is convincing the key actors inside and outside of Afghanistan that the United States is more interested in leaving than succeeding in this conflict. We have been warned. announcing the date of withdrawal. They now believe that they can beat him simply by outlasting us. And you gotta ask yourself, what kind of effect does that have on our troops' morale and on our allies? See that in what I just mentioned, that's not the only area where the Obama administration has failed our allies. They escalated a minor zoning issue in Jerusalem recently into a major dispute with our most important ally in the Mideast, Israel, of course. They treated the Israeli Prime Minister shabbily in Washington, and we're wondering why some of our allies are kind of scratching their head, wondering what the heck is America thinking right now? Why are we kind of poking our allies in the eye? When a Turkish-sponsored flotilla threatened to violate a legal Israeli blockade of Hamas from Gaza, the Obama administration was silent. And this all happened recently. When Israeli commandos were assaulted as they sought to prevent unmonitored cargoes from being delivered to Hamas terrorists, the Obama administration sent signals that, it might allow a UN investigation into the matter. An investigation that would be sure to condemn our ally Israel and bemoan the plight of Hamas. Now, and the mainstream media still doesn't have this one right. It just infuriated me to see the mainstream media take such crop pictures to make the conditions look different than they actually were. If the media would do its job, our world, certainly our nation, could be a better, freer place if our media you know, and it took me 4.5 years to get a 4-year degree because I worked my way through college and I had to take time off. The mainstream media is not good. It's because I call them out on when it is that they are so biased, they are so prejudiced in their reporting, and they know that I know that we don't have a good relationship, and I call them out because of the United States military, because my son has chosen to put it all on the line for our freedoms, for our freedom of speech, our freedom of the press. I don't want to see that abused. I do not want to see him and all of our military personnel's efforts go to waste in this fight for our freedom of the press if they are just going to kind of trample on that and not speak truth and not report the facts and not let us make up our minds, but they instead trying to prejudice the public opinion by reporting not the facts, but their opinion. It just infuriates me, and it has so much to do with my love of our Constitution, my respect for our military, and I do not want to see that freedom of our press abused any longer. That's why I'm always up on my high horse about covering that incident, and it saddens me for our freedoms. Back to some of these things going on though in the Obama administration. Loyal NATO allies in Central Europe were undermined by the cancellation of a missile defense program with virtually no warning. That really ingratiated ourselves with these allies. At the same time, Russia and China are given preferential treatment while remaining silent on their human rights violations. Meanwhile, the Obama administration reaches out to some of the world's worst regimes. This is where their priorities are skewed, folks. They shake hands with dictators like Hugo Chavez and send personal letters to Iranian mullahs and envoys to North Korea and ease sanctions on Cuba and talk about doing the same with Burma now. And that's when they're not on their worldwide apology tour.